Web databases. Now let's talk about web databases. When we build a website, you always need to store and retrieve data. So just like the user information, the posts, the comments, the bookings, the orders, all these things, we store them somewhere, and this is the database. And some common example of database is MySQL, Postgre, and MongoDB. SQL itself is a structured query language. It is the language that you use to communicate with any of these databases. But MongoDB is a no SQL option. It stores data in a more flexible way, like in a JSON-like format. So these databases work with backend languages like PHP, Python, or Node.js, whichever language you're using. They handle the user login, the contact form, or whatever your website is all about. This is where you store them. So you can think of this like filling up the cabinet of your website, like storing information, to keep the information organized and structured, so that whenever you need the information, you can fetch from it and update it accordingly. This is what the database is doing for us. Okay, web hosting and deployment. So we've built our website, but how do people actually see this very beautiful website we've made? This is where web hosting and development comes in. Web hosting is simply the place where your website lives. Your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, the images, everything you have written, all your server codes, it's basically stored somewhere. And this is like a special computer that is connected to the internet 24/7. You understand? So deployment means uploading all these files from your local machine up to the server. So your site becomes accessible to anyone who has internet access. To make this work, you need two things. You need a domain name and you need a hosting provider. We're going to be talking a lot about all of these concepts in this channel. So once your website is deployed and hosted, your site is now live. So anyone in the world, anywhere in the world, as long as they have internet connection, they should be able to visit your website through their devices, from any browser that they use. So think of this like building a house. Hosting is like the plot of land where your house is sitting, right? And the domain name is like the address which people can use to locate that very building. Web security basics. Web security isn't just about SSL and a strong password. It's also about writing secured code and keeping your software updated. That is why we stress that developers, write their codes using secured coding practices, because one of the biggest dangers today in cybersecurity is something called the zero-day exploit. This is when a hacker discovers a vulnerability in the code that a developer himself, has written. The developer doesn't know that vulnerability is there, but the hacker has already discovered it and have tried to exploit that vulnerability. So that is why regular update and monitoring is really, really very crucial. So because the faster you're able to identify and patch these vulnerabilities, the less time the attacker have to take advantage of that vulnerable system. So HTTPS. HTTPS is the secured version of HTTP. It makes sure that the data that is sent between your website and the user browser is encrypted. So that's why you see the little lock icon in your browser. That is HTTPS in action. So let me demonstrate this so you understand what I'm saying. So let's say a user, for example, is logging into your website. If the site uses HTTPS, the data like the email and the password, it gets encrypted before it leaves the browser of your user. You understand? So imagine there's a hacker sitting somewhere between the user's between the user's browser and the server. We call that kind of attack the man in the middle attack. They can intercept that data while it's on transit. But here is the thing, because that's your website is using HTTPS. When they try to intercept the data, they get scrambled code, not the actual password of the user, because it is encrypted. And without the decryption key, the attacker cannot make sense of that code, right? Because it is encrypted. So even though they catch the message, they can't read it. That's why encryption is so powerful. It protects your data even if it gets intercepted. So to get HTTPS working, you need an SSL certificate. SSL certificate is like a digital passport that proves your site is trustworthy and encrypts the information between the user and your server. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So now there's also input validation. Input validation means that you have to check anything that the users are submitting in the form. So there's a system as a developer you have to use to clean user input and make sure that they are not trying to, you don't allow SQL injections or cross-site scripting and encoding. So these are input validation that developers have to understand to help make their applications safer. So now let's talk about content management system, or CMS for short. A content management system is a tool that lets anyone, not necessarily developers, to create and manage websites without writing any code. Popular examples are WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. I like WordPress. I've been using WordPress for a very long time. This platform makes it really very easy for anyone to launch and maintain a website. You can build everything from a blog to a business website to even a full e-commerce store using just drag and drop editor and a simple dashboard. So a CMS platform is especially helpful for non-developers or a team who want to update their sites regularly without needing a developer every time to write code for them. Because now even if you're a developer, it's still very, very important to understand how CMS works, because often you will get to integrate and customize and even secure this kind of system for real world users, because a lot of clients and companies already use tools like WordPress. So they also expect you that you already know how the system works and can also build on that, because they want you to also work with them, right? Yeah. So if you understand and can apply these core concepts, front end, back end, hosting and deployment, web security, even use content management tools, you've got what it takes to be a full stack web developer. But you don't need to know everything right away, but you need the right mindset and the willingness to learn, to build, and to keep learning. That is how you become really better. And honestly, this is what this channel is all about. And the next video we'll dive into HTML and start building from ground up. So let's start actually creating things. Let's go from watching to start creating things. So see you in the next video.